Good morning, crime community. I'm here to read out the epilogue of Squeaky Fromm's book. Let us begin. Ford had to be equally delicate in his communications to the public. The message he sought to deliver was perhaps the least controversial imaginable, one of the country pulling together as it headed into the bicentennial year, but with the FBI agents storming Native American protesters holed up in the Oglala Sioux Reservation near Pine Ridge, South Dakota, the nation's colonial origins were being questioned nightly on the evening news. The quashing of the disturbance had led thousands to decry federal treatment of American Indians, and everywhere Ford went, demonstrators followed to voice their disapproval. Arriving at the Seattle Center for the fundraising luncheon, Ford was met by hundreds of protesters. A contingent of American Indians hammered on the convention center's door with replica tomahawks, easily stealing media attention from the president's vague message in favor of smaller government. Inside the exhibition hall, the crowds of 1,800 Republicans, small contributors with friendlier and party leaders, tried to make the most of it. Dynamite, explained an upbeat Washington Governor Dan Evans, standing beside Ford and Packwood on the platform. It was a signal to the few younger people present and to all the media within earshot that the Republican leadership was hip enough to borrow a line from Jimmy Walker, the jive-talking star of the television hit comedy Good Times. The mood of the floor was more subdued. It's not super articulate, but it comes through, and one attendee tried to sound enthusiastic about Ford. You get the feeling you've known people like him. And spending most of the time at fundraisers, the president devoted an hour to the one official part of the Seattle visit, the White House Conference on the Domestic and Economic Affairs. Responding to the question, Ford said he would veto a consumer protection bill, declined to comment on the proposal Alaska natural gas pipeline, and affirmed his opposition to the national health care plan. He already had vetoed a $7.5 billion education appropriation. Piling on national health insurance would only have imposed new budget problems. The president said, no sexy headlines, but no gaffers either. The Senator Packwood continued to tag along. Ford flew to Portland, but he was greeted by Senator Hatfield and the state's junior miss, who presented the president with Portland symbol, a red rose. Ford's destination, the Sheraton Portland Hotel, was surrounded by hundreds of protesters. Inside, though, there were nearly 600 people who had bought $100 tickets to the main event, a dinner dance promoted to the Hustle with Ford, the president who had learned to dance when the Charlton was still popular, and read in a memorandum that the name referred to the currently popular dance, the Hustle. The Hustle with Ford helped haul in $100,000 for the Oregon Republican Party, but the president didn't delay. After finishing a steak dinner, he headed to the Portland Memorial Coliseum, joined 12,000 Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and Campfire Girls, and 4-H Club members participating in the bicentennial rally. Senator Packwood at last had been placated with the seat on the platform, where he and other dignitaries could applaud as the Girl Scouts presented the president with the iconic souvenir, a blanket made by Oregon Indians. The question were the kind that the Ford liked. What can I do as a 10-year-old girl to help my country? Asked Campfire Girl Rhonda Morrison. Rhonda, the president replied, simply by asking that question and showing an interest in helping your country, you have made a great contribution. The crowd applauded wildly, still more when Ford joined in a sing-along, and even this pleasant stopover caused grumbling. I know it was supported to be a youth rally, complained Carmelita Emerson, a 4-H Club member, but there were too much cuteness. Carmelita had been cut off before finishing her question, which was, how could America afford to join Apollo-Soyuz spacecraft mission with the Soviet Union when people in this country are starving? Outside the Coliseum, the contingent of pro-Indian demonstrators included a local basketball star, Bill Walton of the Portland Trailblazers, who happened to party with the Grateful Dead. Doesn't say that here. Who commanded his own share of media attention, while presence guaranteed that the arrest of the two demonstrators and the cries for the others, down with the FBI and FBI out of Pine Ridge, would be reported widely. Even the cops gave Ford a hard time. A Portland policeman complained that since security for the 4-hour visit had cost the city $10,000, protecting Ford was more than local treasuries could afford. He said if the president insisted on coming, perhaps the Portland police should send a White House a bill for their services. Moving on to the last leg of the trip, President Ford arrived in Sacramento, McClellan Air Force Base at 10:45 p.m. As Ford prepared to leave the aircraft, Secret Service agent Ron Pontius received the ominous warning an unknown male had just called Channel 3 to say that 10 snipers were waiting for the president when he gets off the plane. Ground security found no sign of the assassination squad, however, and the doors of Air Force One swung open. General Ford usually appeared in public with a smile on his face, but now he was too weary, at first to manage a grin for the habitually somber Jerry Brown, who stood on the tarmac on a hot, muggy day. Governor Brown offered boilerplate greetings on behalf of the people of California and introduced the president to the assorted state official and the businessmen who came to the airfield. In office for less than a year, the enigmatic Brown was already being mentioned as a possible Democratic presidential contender, while many considered Ford's grip on the Republican nomination far from certain. As Ford finished shaking his hands as the welcoming committee, Brown abruptly dashed off to the crowd of military personnel that had gathered to greet the president and started grabbing for his outreached hands. "Oh," said Governor Brown, several onlookers, and when they unexpectedly found themselves shaking his hand, Ford instinctively followed Brown and began to work the crowd himself. And as Governor passed ahead, the president put forth a steady stream of "Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming out." He was met with effusive greetings. "Hiya, Mr. President." "Hello, Chief," and especially, "Where's Betty?" Referring to the outspoken First Lady, whom several opinion polls rated as the most popular, then her husband Betty Ford had remained in Washington for this trip. After the president kissed the sleeping baby, the blonde teenager popped in front of him. "What about a kiss?" she asked the leader of the free world. "Well, okay," Ford replied, "although I'm not considered as much of a ladies' man as some of the occupants of the White House." Ford did enjoy the attention of now receiving the young woman at galas and rallies. Betty, he knew, resented his sometimes flagrant flirting. Ford kissed the teenager on the cheek. Ahead, meanwhile, Governor Brown had paused a fix of jammed camera brought by one of the spectators. He handed it back from Ford, caught up, going the owner a chance to snap a shot at the president, and made his way along. "You're one of those mechanical types, huh?" Ford said to Brown, who asked again, seemingly intent on out-politicizing the president and shaking the hand of everyone present. The rivalry continued after they arrived at the Senate Hotel in downtown Sacramento. 300 onlookers were waiting to welcome Ford as he emerged from the limousine, and the president rushed past Brown to make sure that this time he got them first. It was nearly midnight. Bob Hartman, Ford's counselor and longtime friend, glanced at his watch and then over to the re-energized president. "My God, the man isn't human," he muttered, as Ford continued shaking hands, including those of all 5 members of the mariachi band that had come to play in his honor. Brown Sue caught up with the president, worked the crowd right behind him, when a spectator yelled, "Hey, Jerry." Both Ford and Brown waved back. The president finally got to his hotel room and fell asleep. Ford had risen before 7 a.m. Eastern Time and been awake and politicking for some 20 hours straight. He would have to have been up again and following the morning 6:30 The night was still young, however, and for Governor Brown, who had an advantage of a 3-hour Pacific time differential, as well as almost 3 decades in age, and depositing the president at his suite, Brown invited a few reporters to join him for a drink across the town at the Cosmopolitan Hotel. Invigorated and alert forever, Brown strolled across Capitol Park, reporters and 3 gubernatorial aides in tow. A week before, the plan to kidnap Brown and hold him for $10 million ransom had been folded inside a lost wallet. The billfold's owner was still at large, with no security checks had been made by any of the half-dozen police agencies involved in the daily planning. These governor's movements were just too hard to predict. Brown's safety fell to a lone policeman tagging along his assignment to drive the governor straight home after drinks. President Ford's security was not so nonchalant. Every stop of his trip had been carefully mapped out by the Secret Service, the agency charged since 1865 with the protection of the president. The service received more than 200,000 tips a year and conducted at least a curiosity investigation of 15,000 of them. Usually these resulted in rather one-sided discourses between talkative crackpots and laconic, patient, largely uncomprehending agents. One such character, Thomas David Elbert, had made the tactical error of calling the Secret Service Sacramento office on August 16th and saying, "I'm going to kill your boss, President Ford." On May 1975, the 34-year-old Elbert had been discharged from Terminal Island Federal Prison, the same institution that Charlie Manson left in 1967 after serving 5 years for threatening President Nixon's life. The call returned Elbert to jail for the duration of Ford's visit. He later pleaded guilty to threatening the president's life. Down the coast, Santa Barbara police stumbled upon a plot to kill President Ford during his visit to Sacramento. On August 26, they arrested Gary Stephen Desure and Preston Michael Mayo for stealing a television set from a local motel. Once in custody, the pair of drifters who supported identical mustaches and sideburns quickly recounted a cross-country odyssey that had been intended to culminate in Ford's assassination. Desure, 31, liked to brag that once he had shared a cell with Charles Manson in the Los Angeles County Jail. He reported to make an earlier threat on Ford's life and recently had escaped from a mental hospital in Montana. On August 12, 1975, Desure had teamed up with Mayo, a 24-year-old ex-convict from Virginia, at Montana's Glacier National Park. According to the police reports, the pair went on the road, financing their travels through robberies and forged checks, and stopped on August 19th in Dixon, Tennessee, to draw up the plans for their California trip. Desure and Mayo didn't much like the way Ford was running the country, or even the man himself. They decided to kill him. Writing on a stolen medical prescription pad, they listed their favorite weapons and outlined how to place dynamite for maximum effect. The list sources for blueprints of the California Capitol and other buildings where Ford might stop. Then plan called the placing explosive in the sewers beneath the city streets. Desure would detonate the dynamite and act as a lookout. Mayo would fire on the president. The explosion and resulting disruption would make it easy for the pair to escape. Desure and Mayo arrived in Los Angeles on August 25th. They were driving a rented 74 Datsun sedan when a California highway patrolman pulled up them over. Concerned that Desure's collection of outstanding warrants might impede their plans, the pair sped away, later abandoning the car at the Hollywood Burbank Airport. They had rented another car and headed 100 miles north to Santa Barbara, but in their haste to desert the Datsun in Burbank, Desure and Mayo had left them behind an outline of the assassination plot. The burglary charge was enough to hold the pair in lieu of a $100,000 bail apiece. When President Ford arrived at McClellan Air Force Base, Desure and Mayo grimly noted the occasion in the Santa Barbara County Jail. A few days before the visit, Channel 40 in Sacramento had received a threatening phone call. "Get your paper and get this," the caller said. This is the SLA. President Ford is going to die in Sacramento on Thursday. The caller then hung up. The station reported the call to the Secret Service, but no action was taken. There were no leads to pursue, the agents reported. That's the end of that chapter, and tomorrow we will be going into a chapter called The Secret Service. So if you think there's any truth in what I'm saying or you enjoy any of this, please like and subscribe, and have a great day.